Welcome to another episode of Viking Voices, the People of Princeton. I'm Tom Burton, very, very proud superintendent of Princeton City Schools. Hey, our first segment, superstar pitcher, Andrew Atterington. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Andrew Jr., I guess it wasn't that long ago you made a pretty big decision.
Yeah.
And what was that decision?
I committed to Clemson.
Clemson Tigers.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why Clemson and not another SEC or Big Ten school?
Well, I had it narrowed down to UC, Kentucky, and Clemson. I talked it over with all my coaches, my parents, everyone I knew around baseball, and overwhelmingly, I got Clemson as the best fit. And it's just, ACC baseball, I'm ready to go there.
Yeah. So, I mean, great tradition down there, great baseball.
Oh, yeah.
They got a phenomenal player in you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk a little bit about, you talked about process, talking to parents and all that. You also have to follow a pretty big system or process to balance sports and academics.
Yeah.
Great student, well over 3.5 grade point average. So how do you balance? What system do you use?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not the best at, getting my work done during the baseball season, but I just try and focus on academics. I look into the future, scholarship money for academics. I know where I have to be at to gain more money. So I just try and maintain my GPA, class rank, so I can get that get more money and go to Clemson for less costs.
Sure. Well, and for those who don't know, one of the interesting things about baseball is they don't have a lot of scholarship money.
Right.
It's not like football or basketball where it seems like a lot of people get those opportunities.
Right.
So they have to split a lot of times baseball scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get a scholarship, but not a full scholarship.
Yep.
It's very rare to actually get that.
Right.
But I know you're very humble. You just said that. I'm not the best at getting work done, but yet you have over a 3.5 grade point average, well above that. Let's talk a little bit about baseball.
Right.
So this year itself, not a lot of wins.
Yep, a little struggle, but
A little struggle, but some big ending almost, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we got further than we have in several years.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that very first playoff game we had this year.
Well, like you said, it was a little bit of a struggle for the season. But that first playoff game, we just started playing for each other. The team, we found each other. Our team slogan for the playoffs was "Not today." We weren't going home today.
I love it.
We went out that first game and we played our hardest. We weren't going home that day, and sure enough, we won.
Next game, big underdogs.
Oh yeah.
You have to go to Harrison and play on their home field. What happened there?
Well, we had Carson McDaniel on the bump, and he delivered.
Yeah, for those who don't know, the bump is actually the pitcher's
Yeah,
mound.
yeah. He pitched all 7 shutout, complete game shutout, and that was another game where it was just very hype. We were very excited to be there, and we didn't want to go home that day.
Yeah, not today.
Yeah, not today.
I love that slogan. So you guys played the #1 team in the state, fought them hard, a couple untimely errors on us certainly hurt. I know you pitched. I thought you did a great job.
Thank you.
Didn't give up an earned run, and I know the future is very bright for Princeton baseball.
Mm-hmm.
We're returning all starters except for 2.
Yep. And we got Henry Haig back. And that's gonna be
Henry
big.
Haig, yeah, that was another injury right at the beginning of the year that hurt.
Yeah, that killed.
Yeah.
Third game of the year.
Yep.
He's the leader for our team. He kind of does everything. He catches, he hits, and he pitches. And
Yep.
to lose him kind of sucked, but he'll be back next year. We'll be strong.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, very, very exciting year for sure.
For sure.
Going into your senior year. Now, later in the segment, actually, you are a senior now, right?
Yep.
Officially a senior. Boy,
Yep.
you're getting old. Later in this segment, we'll talk to 2 unbelievable seniors, and their message is really, really strong about hard work and perseverance and loving the diversity and what Princeton brings.
For sure.
We talk all the time about making a hashtag Viking Diff and about empowering students.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel empowered at Princeton?
Well, we got a lot of young guys for the baseball team. I'm going to talk about the baseball team.
Sure, please.
So myself, I feel empowered to be a leader for them. I got to help them throughout school and baseball. Help them be the best person they can be, best student, best teammate, best player they can be.
Yeah. And for those people that are really big baseball aficionados, they know that there's lots of times in baseball where you can get down.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the strike zone was a little bit questionable initially, but then I thought the umpire did a really, really nice job. Very consistent after
Very
the
consistent,
beginning.
yeah.
A little frustrating. I felt like there's a couple strikeouts, a couple more you would have had. But the
Yeah.
reality is you have to deal with that in life, right?
Oh, yeah.
So life is, or baseball and athletics, great parallel to life. Everything's not going to go your way. So how do you deal with frustration yourself when you're playing baseball or in the classroom or at home?
For baseball, I will agree with you. I felt like that was a very narrow strike zone. He was very consistent though. But I just tried to control what I can control, you know? Throughout the baseball year, when we had our struggles, I just had to do what I can do. Control what I can control. It's the same thing in the classroom, you know? Control what you can control, do what you can, and don't let the little things hurt you.
I love that. What a great way to end this segment by you talking about controlling the controllables. We talk about that all the time in life. We get frustrated with things that really aren't even have anything to do with our life, and then we get so consumed by it, it influences decisions we make.
For sure.
Yeah, so I love that. Well, thanks for joining us, and I know you have a big baseball summer coming up, and who are you playing for again?
Midland Redskins, so I'm very excited for that.
Midland Redskins, top team that they have, traveling all over the country to play. And I know you're going to tell me, Mr. Burton, I hit mid-90s this year. I'm excited.
We hope.
Yes, yes. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll be right back with you. Viking Voices, the people of Princeton. Welcome back to segment 2 of Viking Voices, the people of Princeton. I'm here with superstar student. What an unbelievable young lady this is, Annette Strickland. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Annette, top 20. You knew that that was a goal of yours for a while.
Yes.
And we had this great program where we recognize those people in the top 20 academic students of Princeton. And talk a little bit about where you finished and why that was important.
Well, I finished being third in the class, and it meant a lot to me because it definitely is something that I worked for, and it's definitely a goal that I had from the beginning of high school. And my sister was also in the top 20, so when I went to her program and saw her finish in that top 10, I knew like in that moment that it was something that I wanted to, and it felt really good to be there with all of my friends who were also, you know, at that program, seeing all the support, and especially the underclassmen who came because they aspire for that as well. So it was just a really great moment that, you know, I got to live through.
So little sibling rivalry maybe.
Maybe just a little.
And where's your sister finish?
My sister, she finished 6th, I believe.
Okay.
So,
but
yeah.
she didn't finish 1 or 2, so.
No.
You
so
got her.
I got her this one time. Yep.
Yeah, she's an amazing young lady. What a great talent, talented musician
Yes.
as well. And you do so many different things at Princeton as well. Talk a little bit about the balance you had to have with rigorous academics and all the other activities that you have, and talk about those.
Well, I did a lot of things in high school. I joined many clubs, and I tried to get involved with as many things as possible. I also worked a job and did lots of community service, but balancing that with the full IB diploma and then sports was definitely a struggle. It was something that I did not anticipate being as much of a struggle, but part of that could essentially be because, you know, we lived through a pandemic, some things changed, a lot of things were not the same as I expected them to be. But it definitely taught me a lot about time management, communication, you know, expressing my needs to others. It was definitely an experience that I think helped me grow for college, especially because those skills are going to be needed. But I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to do everything that I wanted to do, you know, thespian troupe, key club, be in choir for some time, play the sports that I wanted to. And I'm glad that I didn't have to give anything up. But it definitely taught me that, you know, there's a time for school, there's a time for sports, and I have to find a way to make all of it work at the same time.
Yeah, great. You mentioned college. So you want to talk a little bit about where you're going and why?
I'm going to the University of Alabama at Birmingham because they have an amazing nursing program, and I am going to be majoring in nursing. And I also wanted to minor in Spanish and French to specifically be a translator in medical facilities, and they have a program that's directly tailored to that for foreign language. So that was definitely a big deciding factor. And of course, you know, scholarship money is a factor, and they definitely delivered in that category. And all of the, you know, all of the stars kind of aligned to UAB, and I love the school. So it was definitely the perfect fit for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. A couple years ago, Cincinnati Bearcats played in the Birmingham Bowl, and so spent some time there. And it was amazing. Went to the Civil Rights Museum. Just a really very impactful visit that I had there. And my wife does, when we go to museums or whatever, my wife reads every single thing. And I'm usually ahead of her, looking, oh my goodness, got to see this, got to see that. When I went there, it was so impactful. I mean, she was so far ahead of me because I was just trying to take in the great civil rights leaders that did so much, and the unfortunate issues that have kept the whole entire race down for so long, specifically because of prejudice and racism and all that. It's one of the things I'm so proud of about Princeton, and the beautiful tapestry of diversity of our student body. And you talked a little bit about that in your speech. So talk a little bit about the value of diversity to you.
I think that it's really important to be in a space that values diversity, and not one necessarily where the students have to push for it to be a thing and to be prevalent, because then it kind of feels like the institution doesn't want to implement it. But at Princeton, that was never the case. You know, it was always very clear that it was something that the institution valued, which of course is going to make the students feel more comfortable and more safe. And you know, I've been at Princeton my entire life since I was in kindergarten, so this is all I've known. But I have friends that go to other schools who tell me that what we have at Princeton isn't normal at other places and other spaces, and they wish they had something that was that inclusive and that diverse. So I valued my time at Princeton, especially being able to kind of look around, and there were people from different backgrounds, you know, every single type of different background, whether it be like racial, you know, ethnicity, socioeconomic, and that was something that I knew was going to build a good foundation to go into the real world, especially since there are going to be times where diversity probably isn't that prevalent, whether it be like at a job or at my future school or any place that I go. So having this be, you know, where I am in my foundational years and my upbringing, it really meant a lot. And I know it meant a lot for, you know, my friends and my classmates as well, because we had those discussions about it, and it was definitely something that kind of left a really great impact on us and on me especially.
You know, it's funny that you do such a great job speaking. You have a presence about you. People talk about it. And when you're at the podium, both at Top 20 program and also yesterday at Stewart.
Yes.
So that was awesome. Listening to you, you talked about a struggle moment in your life, academically, where you weren't used to ever seeing anything that was not an A.
Oh, yeah.
So talk a little bit about that and the kind of how you overcame it.
Well, my junior year, I got my first ever B in pre-calculus. Pre-calculus got to me.
Yeah.
Math is not my strong suit, I will say. But I remember like it being this detrimental experience for me at the time, because I thought that I had to have that like perfect all A transcript, because I knew that I could have achieved that in a way, and I had been so far, especially with all the AP and IB courses. Like, it wasn't necessarily something that was extremely difficult. So when I did have that first B, I thought that there was a problem or like something wrong, but I had to kind of allow myself a little bit of leniency for the situation and the circumstance, because at the time I was a remote student during COVID, and I don't think many students anticipate having to teach themselves pre-calc over a computer, you know, at home. So, you know, given the circumstances and the situations, and the fact that, you know, I did try my best, I did work hard, and, you know, it ultimately just didn't work out for that last A. I came back my senior year, still got the all A's, so it really is that one B on my transcript. But it was definitely a moment where I realized that it's okay to kind of try your best and it still not be the definition of perfect, because that's going to happen in the future. You know, we can't all be flawless and perfect at all times. But it was an experience that I learned from, and I'm honestly very grateful for at the end of the day, because I think I needed to experience that at least once. And other people probably like hear the story and are like,
Yeah.
Annette, a B, like what are you talking about? That's fine, and it is fine, and I know that now. So that's why I say it's something that I definitely think needed to happen to me. But I worked through it, and I came back my senior year, again, ended third. So I mean, it didn't hurt me that much. So.
Sure, no, that's phenomenal. And you know, it's interesting because I think sometimes what happens is people look to get a grade and not necessarily learn. It's always about learning.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about the grade. But we talked about in the first segment, I talked about how Andrew had well over 3.5. We're talking about this grade, and your grade point average is over 4. I mean, just amazing. But it's about the hard work that goes into getting the grades. It's what you learned along the way, what the transference of knowledge, which is critical.
Yeah.
Let's end this way, if you don't mind.
Okay.
All right. Talk a little bit about how you feel empowered. I think you have along the great segment that we've had, but talk a little bit about how you feel empowered at Princeton.
Well, for me, I feel empowered to like represent my communities because I'm somebody who comes from like different backgrounds. So, you know, I am African American, but I'm also Hispanic, and that is something that like I value, and it feels great to be in an environment that values it as well. So I feel empowered to lead in both of those sectors and be like a positive representation, especially since there are underclassmen who are following my same path, whether it be like educational or with what I have done, who have, you know, come up to me and have told me that, you know, like I'm inspiring them to do the same. And I know one of the current IB diploma candidates is entering her senior year as another African American, and there's not many who do the IB diploma. And she told me, like, I want to get to where you are because there's not many of us. So I definitely feel empowered to, you know, be that representation and to show that, like, regardless of who you are and where you come from and the stigma that others might have towards you, you can still like achieve whatever you want and whatever you put your mind to. And there's no difference in who can or who can't achieve those things. And Princeton has definitely allowed me the resources and the opportunities to be able to do that for my communities.
Well, as a superintendent, that I love hearing that. I mean, that is absolutely the goal. And you know, it is very difficult to make that commitment to be a full IB diploma-seeking student. There's a lot of work in doing that. And so anytime we have that, we love to recognize that and really show our appreciation. And I think our academic rigor that we have at Princeton, a lot of people may not necessarily see that because they look at some artificial measures.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the rigor is there, the high expectations, and clearly you have risen well above the expectations. You've done such a great job, and I wish you all the best at UAB.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back with our second last episode. Paige Burns. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Viking Voices. We're here with Paige Burns, senior extraordinaire. Paige, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Paige. So, Paige, we met when you were first coming into Princeton. I believe I was walking you around. Talk a little bit about your experience at Princeton, and then we'll get into the kind of talking about the top 20. But talk a little bit about Princeton.
So when I came into Princeton, I was a freshman. I had, first of all, never been to a public school, and I had never been to a school that big. So it was very intimidating. And I came in as really an underconfident student. I didn't honestly believe in myself that much and my academic capabilities. But what I learned through the 4 years at Princeton was having so many wonderful teachers who believed in me before I believed in myself really allowed me to exceed my own expectations for myself and ultimately achieve my goals.
You know, it literally just dawned on me. The first episode, Andrew Atterington talked about like a little bit of failure, so did Annette, and you did, and all the while, everybody talking about how Princeton kind of threw their arms around you, Andrew, Annette, and whatever. That's just amazing. So thanks for saying that. I never saw that in you, though. Like when we were walking around, I remember all the great Burnses, right? We're all walking around, and you just were so like full of life. Like you were just ready. That's how I viewed you. So talk about like what it means to be ready to embrace all the different opportunities that Princeton has.
There are so many different ways to get involved at Princeton. There's the music program, the theater program, there's lots of sports, and of course all the clubs, including that. So when I started to get involved, I tried out some different sports and made some really good friends that way. But also all of the different classes that they offered really gave me a chance to explore so many different career paths and types of different academia. So I took a couple law studies classes, I took a lot of science classes, and it really allowed me to kind of see what all the world had to offer for me.
That's 100% what we want to do. We want to create opportunities for kids to explore, to find pathways, that whether it's going to go directly into college, in the military, or directly into employment. But we all end up in jobs. So our job at Princeton, in education in general, is to make sure that we provide all these opportunities. So I'm so glad that you saw that. So now what? Senior, just graduated, top 20, now what?
This fall, I'll be going to the University of Findlay, just 2 hours north. About the same size as Princeton, a little bit bigger. And I'll be doing their pre-veterinary program and their English equestrian program.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So for people that don't know, there's different ways that you compete riding horses. The equestrian, right? There's English, there's Western, there's dressage, there's a lot. And you may not even know that I knew that stuff.
I didn't.
But talk a little bit about what does that mean, English? So you go there for the English equestrian studies.
So English is, a lot of people think of it as more of like the fancier riding, no rodeos or cowboys or anything like that, but they do offer that at Findlay. So I'll be doing a lot of show jumping and maybe a little bit of dressage in there, which is like, the best way to describe it is like horse ballet.
Yeah, for sure, right? If you have not seen that, if anybody out here, if you've not seen a great horse show where they're actually doing dressage, it's amazing. The great communication with the rider and the horse to make sure that horse is following all the commands. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's so competitive.
It is
right?
it's very competitive and it's very challenging. A lot of people look at it and they say, oh, you're just sitting on the horse, but it's so much more than that. Like
Yeah.
every small movement makes a difference.
Like life.
Like life.
Right? And so when you look at the whole communication that you have to have if you're doing dressage, let's use that as a kind of a metaphor for Princeton. Talk a little bit about the communication that you've had and how you've met so many different people, and maybe mention what you talked about in your speech.
Yeah, so at Princeton, I learned to really communicate with my teachers because when I came in, I was coming from an academic background where the teachers were not as supportive. So I had a little bit of fear that my teachers weren't going to step up and support me. But over the years, I learned that I could come to them with almost anything. And so my teachers became more than just teachers. They were friends to me, they were family to me, and they just lifted me up and walked me through every step of high school, and especially Mr. Zimmerman helped me out when I was making some tough decisions about college and the future. Having that support system at school where it can be a safe place was really meaningful and impactful for me, and it's the only reason that I am where I am.
Well, gee, wow. Thank you. We're going to have to make sure our teachers see this entire episode. Again, 3 great interviews. There's no question about that. You talked about something in your speech, in top 20, and the second you said #VikingDiff, everybody in the backstage, they looked immediately at me, right? Which is so funny because we work so hard. Like, that is our identity. We make a Viking diff. We make a Viking diff. That's really important, a Viking difference, if you will. Talk a little bit about that.
When I was writing my speech for the top 20, I started to think about, like, what Princeton meant to me, and I really wanted to drive home the point that we were different from other schools, because I have gone to other schools and experienced that the Princeton experience is so unique. And for me, the Viking diff is the teachers and the community that they create. And I really wanted the listeners to know that the Viking diff is something that you see every day at Princeton, and it's not just a hashtag. It really has meaning behind it.
That was awesome. Listen, you did such a great job before. I always ask how you feel empowered. I feel like you, the entire time, you talked about being empowered by Princeton. But do you have anything that you want to add?
I think what made the biggest impact for me was my teachers asking me questions about my own personal life. Mr. Tucker was one who would always come to me and ask about horseback riding, and that's when I knew that they cared about me beyond my academic capabilities, and they didn't just see me as a student to kind of pump through the machinery, that I was a person to them. And that's what allowed me to succeed in their classes, because they made me feel so comfortable and at home that I could come to them and ask for help.
Yeah, you know, being vulnerable, I think, is so important. And I really appreciate how vulnerable you just were here. And especially the very first thing you talked about was not being confident. You said underconfident of a student. I'm glad that Princeton has been very impactful for you. I know that as much as Princeton's given to you, I know you've given a ton to Princeton. You and Annette and Andrew, and in our next episode when we talk to Paul, it's not just what a school gives. It's the students give so much and make it, man, make the Viking diff and make, you know, I love going into schools, going all across the district and seeing unbelievable students and the passion they have for learning. And thanks so much for joining us. You did a great job. We'll be right back with you. Welcome back to Viking Voices, the people of Princeton. We're here the last segment with Paul Wilson. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you.
So, Paul, you are an unbelievable student. Your presence. And when you were speaking at the Top 20 event, your words really resonated with so many people. But you praised other students along the way. And specifically Annette. I remember you were talking so much about her and about being so influential in your life. Talk about the people who you met at Princeton and what that means to you. So
I came to the middle school, obviously with everybody else in 6th grade, but I didn't actually start off at Princeton. I started off at a school, Bethany, that's kind of close to where the high school is, and I came in the 3rd grade. And immediately during that transition, it felt like I found my family. I mean, everyone, it was just, there was this element of diversity and openness, and everyone, especially when I got to the middle school after the fact, and after I was promoted from the 5th grade, I got to the middle school, and everyone there was just, I mean, so insightful and so intelligent. And I met Annette on the first day, and I remember looking at her and looking at her friends, and I knew that that was a group of people that would change me for the better throughout the rest of my academic career with Princeton. So I was with, I met Annette and I met all our friends, and that group of people, they challenged me to better myself, and they challenged me to become someone who they could not only be proud of, but I could compete with in that academic arena, and it's changed me for the better.
Yeah, I think that friendly competition sometimes gets lost, right? When people are like, well, I mean, we talked about it, right? We had 3 top 20 people here, or top 20 students, excuse me, that really unbelievable in their own right, but it's not necessarily about where you finish, it's what you learn during the process. So talk a little bit about Princeton and how you feel empowered.
At Princeton, there's just so many opportunities to realize your best possible self, whether it's in academia, whether it's in athletics, or just any hobby that you might have. There's a space at Princeton to nurture that. So where you think that you might not fit into the mold of what the school has to offer, they'll make room, and they'll make sure that you're not only heard, but you're taken care of, and they give you all these tools that are necessary to going out into the world. And you apply them, and you become somehow even greater than you were when you were at Princeton. So they're empowering you through all these resources and ultimately preparing you for success.
So Paul, you brought out something that's really, really near and dear to me in that student voice.
Yeah.
And having that student voice and the fact that you clearly articulated that really makes me feel proud of the great work that our team at Princeton does. You know, as superintendent, I get this great opportunity to talk to wonderful students, the community. In fact, earlier today, I talked to Anthony Munoz for an hour and a half. Hall of Famer, one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time, just got appointed this big position in the Canton Football Hall of Fame, and he's like a superstar. So I get these opportunities, but it's really the team behind me that lifts me. I stand on their shoulders and try to do good work along the way. Whose shoulders are you standing on right now?
Honestly, every single person who I've met between, I really want to say like maybe 6th grade and now, I pride myself on meeting people and identifying those parts of them that I see as like valuable to being a good, great person even. And I kind of try to implement that into what I'm doing and who I'm becoming. So obviously, I'm standing on the shoulders of my family, of my mom, and I'm relying on them. But I'm also, again, looking at these people who have been my fiercest competitors for like years, and I'm standing on their shoulders, which is weird because they're also kind of standing on mine, if you can imagine. And we're all just, it was more working together as a unit, you said,
Sure.
than obviously working against one another. And we've all just become this sort of family because we're all relying on each other.
Yeah. Celebrate the success of others all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, Anthony today talked about how when he was young, his brother pointed in his face and he said, don't ever talk about yourself. If you're good enough, other people will talk about you. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's a difficult, I mean, that's a unique dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
You have people that you want that personal recognition sometimes because that's going to push you. But ultimately, it's about other people, right? Is what is and will always be. Talk a little bit about next year. What's going on next year?
So in the fall of 2022, I will be attending Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and not that I have any plans on changing that, but I will be studying computer science. A lot of people spend a little time deciding on their major, but I think that computer science, it has like this sort of interdisciplinary element to it, and it's just got a lot of applications, even in arenas that you wouldn't necessarily consider it for, like social or even government. And I'm just looking to get an education that I can spread over the vast array of other occupations almost, so that I'm not nailed down to any one thing. But obviously that's looking 4+ years into the future. At college, I'll likely just be caught up with a lot of volunteer work when I'm not busy studying with computer science, because a lot of people say that it's really hard. But I'm just honestly looking to go down to Atlanta and explore myself, because I know it's a big city and a lot of people say it's a fast city, but really I'm just looking to see where I can fit into the mold of this very urban, almost like metropolis.
Sure. You know, it's funny, not too long ago, well, I made mention in an earlier segment that went down to Birmingham and went to this beautiful civil rights museum down there. Because our son plays football for UC. We actually also went the next year to the Georgia Bowl, which is in Atlanta, and they have a beautiful civil rights, whole entire walkway there. I mean, it's so learned there. There's great museums and there's all kinds there. So you will definitely learn a lot and explore a lot there. And Morehouse is a great historically black college.
Yeah.
Super difficult to get in, so congratulations getting in there. And Paul, I talked earlier about an email that you wrote because it was so professional. I actually read it. I read it to your classmates, and they said, that's so Paul.
Wow.
But it was so well written and all that. I know that attention to detail really matters. So in closing, talk about attention to detail and kind of send a message, if you will, to anybody watching about the importance of detail.
Yeah. When it comes to that idea of being attentive to detail, just realize that it's so much more about the effort you put into it, almost more than like the final product. The whole point of being so attentive is that you're making sure that you're paying attention to every single point you're trying to make, and making sure that whatever you create is coherent and it's comprehensive and it's complete. And so when I do things like draft those emails, it's like gnawing, like I'm rereading them and just making sure that it reads well, because one of the best things you can do for yourself as a person, as a student, or just someone who is engaged within our society, whether, again, that's like in academia or it's in athletics, is to be attentive to what you create and what you do, because that it directly it communicates to others what kind of person you are. And it's really a representation of you as a person.
Yeah, and I think it's also intentional too,
Yeah.
right? That intentionality, I think, sometimes gets lost. We talked earlier about frustration. When you get frustrated, sometimes you make decisions
Yeah.
that you shouldn't make. So I asked Andrew, so how do you do that? He said, or how do you avoid that? And he said, it's really, really important for me to just control the controllables and not allow kind of life or the game or whatever to kind of overcome
Right.
you. All right, well, Paul, you did such a great job with the speech, and you ended with a great quote from Van Gogh. So much so, and it so impactful to me. I actually quoted Paul Wilson quoting Vincent Van Gogh. So you want to talk just conceptually about what that quote was about?
Yeah, the quote, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it talked about love, and it talked about love's place in work and in the things that you do. I know that it said that what's done in love is well done. And it's just that idea of love and passion are intertwined. And what we as humans have realized is that anything that you have a passion about, you will ultimately do well in. So to love something is to nurture it, is to appreciate it, is to value it. So if you apply all those tenets of love to anything you do, you'll ultimately end up caring so much about it and give so much of yourself to it that, just like with us and the work we've done in the top 20, that it will bear fruits that you'll cherish for the rest of your life.
Well, Paul Wilson, and I'm saying this only because your good friend Annette would want me to say this.
Yeah.
Number 4 in the class, 1 behind Annette.
Yeah. I'm a getter.
Hey, Paul, thanks for joining us.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate it. Hey, Viking Nation, you got to admit, what an unbelievable episode. Tremendous, tremendous students. And stay tuned for one little special guest visit. Hey, Viking Nation, thanks for joining us at another episode of Viking Voices, the People of Princeton. I would like to thank our great guests today, Andrew and Annette, the A Squad, and Paige and Paul. It's all about the P of Princeton, for sure. We love Princeton. We always end it one way, and of course, as always,
Go Vikes!